welcome to Shad Life. I've been doing a lot of reading about the new Gen 5 Bosch motor because this is like my first real e-bike. Yes, last year I did have that Rambless and it had the Aventon mid-drive motor, their new one, which had 100 Newton meters of torque, and I definitely have some videos about that. I'll put a couple of them in the description, so some of you that are newer to my channel or don't know about that, I'll put a couple of the reviews of that bike. But that was a hardtail. I didn't buy it with the intention that I was going to keep it. I wanted to review it, and it was pretty awesome. But it was also what, a $3,000 e-bike, so the component spec was pretty lame. So I changed out a bunch of components and tested it with better components, and it was a much better bike with legit components on it. But in the stock form, it was kind of like, I count it like a better commuter than a mountain bike, right? So here we are with my next e-bike kind of experience for mountain biking anyway. And I've been reading a bunch about this motor, and it's kind of cool because it will actually like change how much power it gives you based on its sensors. So apparently it's got a bunch of sensors in there, and so when it knows the bike is tilted up and climbing, it'll give you more power automatically and things like that. Like, it's pretty cool to think about that kind of technology in there. And this is why a lot of people are talking about this motor so much and ranting and raving about it. It is 85 Newton meters of torque, so 15 less than that Rambless motor I tested last year. But sometimes it's not always about max power, right? Sometimes I understand that, especially here in America, we get into this, it's got to be powerful, right? The more powerful, the better, right? To me, especially with mountain biking, the finesse is more important. And when I was testing that Rambless, there were a couple of times where I mentioned it was too much power. It was spinning the wheel. It was causing me problems because it was too much power, especially climbing up rocks and things like that. And I actually had an easier time getting up the rocks when I lowered the power on the bike, right? So a motor like this is going to be way more advanced, and it's going to sense that kind of stuff. So that'll be one of the things I'm going to test when I start riding this bike off-road. And I'll talk a lot about how does this motor do. We'll go up some rock armor climbs and things like that and see how it does. But one thing I do want to talk about, and I've briefly talked about this with other e-bikes on my channel, but and I'll do this while riding also. But one key thing to note with any e-bike you're gonna get or ride or motor, right, is you want to pay attention to max peak power. So this is 600 kilowatts, I believe, or watts. I think it's watts, right? But that's its peak power, right? And that peak power is at 7 and that peak power is at 70 RPM, right? That's extremely important to understand, because if you've ever driven a manual transmission car, there is a certain RPM range that gives you the max power, the max amount of acceleration, right? And so you want to be in the correct gear to maximize that power, at least if you're going for ultimate acceleration, right? You want the most power. It's definitely not the most efficient, right? Because obviously, if you're revving the engine up higher in a car, you're going to get a poorer fuel economy, right? Same thing with an e-bike. The more that you're utilizing that max power, the shorter distance you'll be going with the battery. So you just got to keep that kind of stuff in mind. Sure, it's fun, but if you're on a long ride and you're just constantly using all that boost, you're gonna lose range, right? But the thing that I really want to stress about this, because I see people with e-bikes doing this all the time, is they don't downshift. They don't shift into the easier gears. They think that, oh, the electric motor is going to kick in and give me power. And I see people all the time just pushing really hard on their pedals, and they're like not really going anywhere very fast, right? You still need to shift e-bikes like you do a regular bike. You need to downshift into the easier gears, get in that optimum RPM. And with this bike, it's 70 RPM, right? And then you're gonna feel that boost. You're gonna feel that the bike kick in and just go. So yesterday I did a short video where I was riding the bike around my neighborhood, and when I went up that steep hill, even when I used turbo, I downshifted into an easier gear and got into that ideal RPM, and that's when I'm gonna find the most boost for the bike, right? And so keep that in mind if you're riding an e-bike. Make sure you're using the gears and getting yourself in that optimum RPM. And every bike's a little different, but 70 is going to be a good number for most bikes, right? Some bikes you're going to be at a little higher RPM, some a little lower, whatever. It just depends on how they design the motor and where the max torque is, right? So, yep, that's really all I wanted to talk about. Is I'm really excited to test this motor out. I've already talked about the whole rest of the bike, but I figured I should learn more about the motor and what it does and why is everybody ranting and raving about it. And it's like, yeah, there's more powerful motors out there. There's the new DJI one, right? But it's how is that power delivered, right? And that's why everybody's kind of talking about this motor, is it does a really good job delivering the power for the use that you need it for, right? The application, and it can detect, certain things, how much torque you're putting down. So if you're pushing down harder, it's going to assist you. If it knows the bike's at an angle, it's going to go, oh, this person's trying to climb. It's got some brains to it, which is super cool. So I'm really excited to try it out, because honestly, yesterday when I was riding it around on the streets, I was like, wow, this thing isn't really just full on boost. I mean, yes, it was, but it wasn't like that Rambless, right? But I have a feeling that when I'm off road and I get into certain situations, all of a sudden I'm gonna be like, wow, this thing just helped me out. Really, like I think it's gonna be pretty amazing, and I am basing my opinion so far on what I've seen other people talk about. But as you know, I like to do my own thing and talk about this on my channel and experience it for myself and tell you more details about it. And I don't really hear anybody talking about how to make sure you're shifting in the right gear and maximizing the watts and all that stuff when you're on an e-bike. I will do a ride and talk about that. Appreciate your support for my channel. Please like and subscribe. Peace.